From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. September is Recovery Month, celebrating the recovery community and highlighting the importance of evidence-based treatment and recovery practices. Coincidentally, September 1st also begins recriminalization in Oregon, following passage of House Bill 4002. It rolls back a key provision of Measure 110, which voters passed in 2020, decriminalizing possession of small amounts of hard drugs. Now, under the new law, possession will be a misdemeanor, but it does allow offenders to deflect from the justice system into treatment programs on a county-by-county basis. In this episode of Straight Talk, as Oregon begins this new approach, we talk about solutions and hope in the recovery community with Tony Vesna, the co-founder and executive director of Portland's Fourth Dimension Recovery Center, or 4D. 4D is participating in the Deflection programs in Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington counties. Vesna founded 4D 11 years ago. The rapidly growing organization is the first youth-led recovery community of its kind in the United States. The center is a nonprofit that serves over 500 young people each month with recovery support services, including peer mentoring, sober social events, recovery advocacy projects, mutual aid support meetings, and much more. Tony identifies as a person in long-term recovery from alcohol and drugs. Since finding recovery in 2012, Tony has dedicated his life to helping others and has held many positions, including student body president at Portland Community College, founder of Oregon Recovers, and is the current chair of Oregon's Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission. Tony has his bachelor's degree in social work and is a licensed and certified drug and alcohol counselor. Welcome to my guest, 4D Recovery Center co-founder and executive director, Tony Vesna. Welcome to Straight Talk. It's so nice to have you here, Tony.
It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for hosting me during this time.
Well, it's our pleasure, and we want to find out more about 4D. What are you all about?
So yeah, 4D is what's known as a peer-run organization right now, or recovery organization nationally, which just means that the majority of people who work there, or volunteer there, who are on the board of directors are actually people in recovery like myself. And so we bring that lived experience and that recovery-oriented philosophy into our business operations. What we do right now is peer services, basically. And so we have people like me in recovery, who get sober, get a little sober time under their belt, and then they become like recovery coaches or mentors, and they get certified by the state. And we go out and we use our lived experience and some evidence-based communication techniques to instill hope into people and help motivate them to start their recovery journey and then sustain in recovery over the long period. Because we know that when you help people quit using drugs and alcohol and they get to the 5-year mark, the likelihood that they relapse drops down to about 10-15%, which is the equivalent of developing an addiction in the first place. We have recovery centers where people come and hang out and socialize. We have outreach, street outreach efforts. We have recovery housing. And then I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later. We're expanding into some new projects and programs right now that I'm really, really excited about.
So who do you serve? What's the age group?
Yeah, so we have two different targeted populations. One is adolescents, and that's from 13 to 17, and that includes working with their families. We have one recovery center off of Southeast 9th and Salmon, and then we have young adults, and we say that's 18 to 35 is our target population, and we have centers in Washington County, Clackamas County, and Multnomah County.
So you have lived experience, You're in long-term recovery. Tell us a little bit about your story, how bad things got for you, and how did you find recovery?
Sure, and me, like a lot of people who develop an addiction, they're, born with it. I had the genetics, and then I had, some life circumstances, which, led me to use drugs. And I had the, bug where once I started using, I had a really hard time stopping. So I started at a very young age and kind of had a rough childhood. And then, eventually I got hooked on Oxycontins. And I'm sure everybody's aware of all the, trials around the Oxycontin prescribing and stuff. And so I was in that time period where the overprescribing was happening, and I was using those and became addicted. And then eventually the federal government cracked down on the overprescribing, and then those pills dried up in my community and I started using heroin. and I don't blame anybody but myself. I used those things, but, I became addicted. And then, over time, things got worse. I lost my mom to heroin-related car accident when I was about 22, and that led me further into my addiction. And then eventually I was homeless on the streets of Portland, panhandling, committing small crimes, just to continue my IV heroin use until about 27 years old when I was arrested and then released early from jail, and I went to treatment at Volunteers of America for 6 months. And I met other people in recovery, and they had a cool scholarship program through the Department of Criminal Justice. I could get my GED and then go to college, and I went to PCC, and et cetera, et cetera.
So you got your GED at 27 years old.
I did, yeah.
And then you get your bachelor's degree,
Yeah.
and you become licensed alcohol and drug counselor. I mean, you have an amazing success story that gives a lot of hope to people. This month coming up, September, is Recovery Month. What does that mean to you, and what do you hope others people get out of it?
Yeah, so it means a lot to me to have an entire month dedicated to the reality that people can and do recover. And so there's millions of people all over the world who are in recovery, and Recovery Month is a moment to reflect on how amazing it is that people can and do recover and highlight some of those stories of hope. People often think I'm unique, and I'm not. I know a ton of people are just like me, had a similar struggle as me, overcame it, and now they're out in the community helping others, to overcome addiction and get in their recovery. But then it's also a time, kind of politically to kind of reflect on, okay, what's the progress that we've made, and then where are we marching to now, and so the progress we need to make in order to solve the addiction crisis that we have here in the United States.
Well, we hear so much about the addiction crisis across the U.S. and in the state of Oregon. You're so involved. How would you describe the state of affairs when it comes to addiction in the state of Oregon?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been thinking about that. So, despite some of the negativity that I see in the media, I'm actually really hopeful and excited for the future, and I'll tell you why. So, I started organizing around recovery back when I co-founded 4D, 9-10 years ago. And I could not get anybody to talk about it. It wasn't a relevant thing, right? We were underfunded as far as services goes, but it wasn't a political priority, right? And then you fast forward to today, and everybody that I talk to agrees on one thing. Whether it's Democrat, Republican, it's the police, it's the nurses, healthcare providers, it's citizens in the community, everybody agrees that people can and do recover, and that they deserve and need treatment, which is very different than it used to be when it was more of a debate on, do these people deserve anything but jail, right? That was the big debate, because it was more looked at as a moral issue. Now it's looked at more of a medical issue, and the debate is, how do we get these people help? And that's what we see right now, is a big political debate on how to get people the help they need, and not do the people deserve help in the first place.
But at the same time, September 1st also marks recriminalization in the state of Oregon, a new approach where people who come in contact with police over drug use could deflect, but also they could be cited. How is recriminalization going to affect 4D, and how do you think it's going to affect the people that you serve?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so, overall, I'm actually really supportive of the recriminalization framework, because what it's set up is a progressive intervention from public safety when it's needed, where there's more consequences over time. But the intention is for public safety to nudge and push people over to treatment services. And so people often talk about, recriminalization is happening, but they forget a couple key things. One is, the millions and millions of dollars that the legislature put into the community for infrastructure development, so treatment services were readily available for people. They don't see that the deflection programs are working in partnership with the recovery community and peer programs and treatment operators to figure out what that deflection looks like. How do we pass people off, right? And so it's going to affect 4D in a couple ways. We're going to have the opportunity to work with public safety and the criminal justice system to say, hey, we understand you've intervened on this person and you're pushing them towards us. Now it's our turn to take responsibility for motivating them to change and showing them that a life in recovery is actually a really awesome thing, and it's okay. It's not something to be ashamed about, and you can do it, and I'm here to help you along your path because I've done it myself.
And you said that you were arrested. And
Yeah,
that is
a
how
couple
you
times.
did get into recovery eventually.
Sure, yeah. So I went to treatment voluntarily a couple times, and then I went to treatment with a nudge from the judge. And either one can work. And unfortunately, sometimes in our society, we get in very sort of bifurcated viewpoints about, is it this or is it that, right? When actually, with some of the complex social issues like addiction, it's yes and, or it's a combination of the both and people working together, right? And so that's why I'm like just really excited. Right now, it's kind of tenuous, and I look at Multnomah County specifically, and they're really getting beat up in the media, but everybody's trying to figure it out, and they're arguing over what's the best way. And then there's a sense of urgency to address the problem that I've never seen before. And so from that perspective, I'm like, this is really great, because while we can't help people today, we're setting up the system. So like, I have children, so that I know if my kids have an addiction, the way that they're gonna experience it, at least in Oregon, is going to be very different than what I did, and they're going to be able to get the help they need much quicker.
So let's talk a little bit more about deflection, because
Sure.
we keep hearing about that. How do you see that working, and how are you going to fit in? How does 4D fit in? What's your part, and how are you preparing?
Sure. So each county is going to be a little different. There's some basic parameters, and I'm not an expert, but basically, individuals who are caught with, small possession of or small user amounts of drugs who meet certain criteria are going to get pushed over to treatment providers, or like 4D. For example, what we're going to try to do in each county is work with the deflection administrators to say, hey, when you meet people, logistically, we're not quite sure how it's going to work out, but when you meet people who meet the criteria, and you can send them to us, and then we'll reach out and engage them and help them in their recovery journey, right? But that isn't the only consideration, because deflection is going to be a part of a larger criminal justice intervention, right? So if people don't fit for deflection, maybe they get put on probation, but still the focus point of probation is going to be to push people into treatment and help them get into recovery. So even when the criminal justice system has to step in more, the outcome and expectation is still recovering, pushing people over to the treatment sector, individuals like us. And then in a deflection framework, from what I've read, there's not only the intervention that happens with public safety, but there's pre-public safety interventions that happen. For example, 4D, we have street outreach teams. So we'll be going out into the street, educating people about recriminalization and saying, hey, look, we know you're out here, you're using, recriminalization's coming, you're gonna get arrested. What do you think about just taking care of your life right now? What do you think about making change right now? So we'll try to get to those people before. And we'll be doing some of that in partnership with public safety. Maybe they're telling us where people are hanging out. We're going out there before, trying to engage them before they step in. So each county's kind of doing something a little different, which I think is great, because it gives some flexibility to respond to the exact community needs within those
And you're
counties.
working with all these counties.
Yeah. In some iteration, like everybody's scrambling to figure it out. So things are changing quickly and stuff like that. So I don't want to talk too much about the exact. But yeah, there's an overall desire from the public safety, the county administrators, and then the treatment providers to work together to figure it out.
And 4D has a lot of plans for the future, for addiction services, for housing. Tell us about some of your plans.
Yeah, so when 4D started out, we were just a peer program, and we served adolescents and young adults together at the same time. That didn't work, okay, having those two populations together. So we went to just the young adults. But over time, parents and community members, donors, mentors of mine have really pushed me to open up treatment services, specifically adolescent treatment, family services, because there isn't very many in Oregon. And so through the passage of recriminalization last session, the legislature appropriated $4 million to 4D so that we could open up adolescent residential and outpatient treatment services. We're in the process of securing buildings to do that now. It gave us funds to hire our first clinical director, Dr. Krapser. And then in addition, we've been working with Care Oregon to launch those treatment services and open up some recovery housing. So pretty soon we're gonna have a continuum of care for individuals. We'll do the street outreach, get them into our treatment services, and then support them with housing over the long term as they build their sobriety and independence.
I think it's also interesting that you started recovery high schools. The first one in Lake Oswego, right? Harmony
I co-founded that. I was a part of it.
Tell us about that and your plans for future high schools.
Yeah, so the high school thing isn't mine. I got together, had some organizing skills and helped put it together, but it's being led by Sharon Martin, their principal, who's just awesome, and we work together on a lot of things. And so the plan right now is through a legislative concept, we're supposed to open up over 10 more recovery high schools.
Wow.
In Oregon. And that's why I say people, things aren't as bad as it seems, right? You see the people on the street, and then that's the most acute problem, and that's all you see, right? And that's what we focus on, when in reality there's all these other really great things happening, all these other people who are recovering, getting sober, getting their kids back, getting jobs, giving back, becoming individuals just like me. And so that's why I wanted to get on here today and let the public know things are actually getting better and there's hope for the future.
We hear a lot about how Oregon is near the bottom of the barrel when it comes to access to mental health treatment, especially for young people. And there's such a need, as you mentioned, for addiction services and mental health treatment. What are your hopes for the future for mental health for young people and how you could fit in?
Yeah, again, I just want to reiterate how many different partners there are working on the addiction crisis. I've seen a swell of support, both legislatively and just leaders in the community coming together to address the shortage in adolescent treatment services. We're, as part of the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission, we're actually mandated through recriminalization bill, people only focus on the recriminalization and all the other great stuff about it, to do a study on the adolescent treatment sector and give some recommendations to the legislature on improvement. So we're working on that too. And then, lastly, it's we have a governor who I really respect, who takes action, who does what she says, and then a first lady who also has lived experience with a social work background in Oregonians' corner, in our corner working on these issues. So, we are set up really well to make a difference, and that's one reason I'm so hopeful.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a break, but we'll talk more about 4D's future plans for adolescent services, along with Senator Weiden, and ways you can support 4D. We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. As Oregon begins a new approach to drug use and addiction by recriminalizing possession of small amounts of hard drugs, we're looking at one program offering solutions and hope for people with substance abuse disorders, with a special focus on our youth. We're pleased to have joining us Tony Vesna, the co-founder and executive director of Fourth Dimension Recovery Center, or 4D. Once again, Tony, welcome to Straight Talk. It's really nice to have you here with your message of hope and optimism.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You are working with Senator Weiden. You were at a hearing in late May. You testified before the Senate Finance Committee along with Senator Weiden. And I have a clip from that hearing. You were talking about fentanyl. Let's listen.
This week, a classroom full of American teenagers will die from drug overdoses. I have 3 kids. They're very important to me. The likelihood that they'll have addiction is pretty high, given my family. And I just really hope that and implore you all to take swift action that expands access to care and ultimately saves lives, because our kids depend on it. Thank you.
You make Oregon proud, and especially Portland.
You do make Oregon proud. Tell us about your work with Senator Weiden and what you hope to accomplish.
Yeah, I just want to really thank Senator Weiden for inviting me. That was an incredible honor to go and represent Oregon, and then to give my personal and subject matter expertise towards how we can use Medicaid dollars to expand access to treatment programs, especially for adolescents. And so that's mostly what I was talking about. And the senator is committed to ensuring that our kids have access to the addiction and mental health care that they need, focusing on how do we use Medicaid dollars to make access more available, but then also how do we get more programs in our schools. We know kids spend a lot of time in the classroom, and so we need to give those schools the tools they need to do a couple things. One is to help prevent kids from developing addiction in the first place, early intervention, identifying kids who may have an issue, and then providing some, counseling support while they're in school.
What if someone watching has a loved one, a young person who is struggling with addiction they're worried about? Can they reach out to 4D? What do they need to do?
100%. You can reach out to us anytime at www.4drecovery.org, and you can ask for help. If we can't get you the help you need, we will make sure that you get the help that your kids need.
What is your message to families, to young people, to others struggling with addiction?
Yeah, so my message is that when it comes to families, and this will dovetail into our treatment philosophy, it takes a family to overcome. So specifically talking about adolescents, the parents have to participate too. So if you have a kid and they're struggling with addiction and you get them into treatment, you need to go to the treatment too, and you need to participate because the family has to heal together. And practically that makes sense, and then the research supports it. If you're feeling hopeless, I just want to tell you that there is help out there for you. There's a lot of people in recovery that can help you, specifically at 4D at our Adolescent Recovery Center in Portland. Adolescents can come in as long as they self-identify wanting to quit.
How do you feel like your lived experience has helped you in your role as Executive Director of 4D and working with others struggling with addiction?
Yeah, so what I was taught by other recovering people when I got into recovery, that it was kind of my responsibility to carry the message to others who suffer. And so helping others is a foundation of who I am, and incorporating servant leadership is my philosophy and how I operate and help others. It drives me every day to ensure that people don't have to go through everything that I went through. Nobody should, have to lose their mom, not have a dad, because of addiction. And my mom and my father, haven't really got a chance to, or my mom did not get a chance to go to treatment, and my dad's still out there using it and getting the treatment he needs. And so I want to make sure other kids who have parents like mine get the opportunity at the best life that they can.
How does it make you feel when you work with someone and you see them turn their life around? You must have experiences like that, turn their life around like you have.
Yeah, that's the greatest feeling ever, to see somebody, change their life, to see the light come on, to see someone who's hopeless, have hope, meaning, and purpose in their lives. One of the things that drove me to open up adolescent residential and outpatient services is working with desperate parents over the years who had limited options for their kids, and watching them do everything they could to try to get their kids help, and there being no help in Oregon. Some of them, exhausting their resources and sending kids out of state, and then they come back and the same environment without any support, and they relapse. But some of those parents, are working with us at 4D today, and their kids have recovered, and they attribute that to us, and that's one of the greatest feelings ever.
Because we do hear so much about this dearth of services available for young people, so it's wonderful to hear what you're doing. There may be people at home who'd like to support 4D. Tell us some of the ways that people could help you in your work.
Sure, yeah, there's multiple ways to support 4D. Of course, the easiest one is to donate. You can go to our website and donate. We have a big gala coming up, and I think you guys have a photo.
We do, for October 18th, right?
October 18th, yeah. We still have sponsorship tables available. You could sponsor a table and come, or buy an individual ticket. This gala will have about 400 people there, and we'll be highlighting our program and our success. And we call it Gratitude Night because we bring everybody together every year who's helped us in advancing our mission, and demonstrate our gratitude to them, and then our gratitude to being able to help our clients find recovery as well.
So that's October 18th. Tony, we have about 40 seconds left for you to leave our viewers with a final message that you'd like to send home.
Yeah, the final message that I have for everybody out there is there's a sense of urgency to address the issues that we see on the streets. And I just want to say that help is coming. People are working towards solutions. It's contentious, but that is good, because it's going to hopefully result into the best product possible that's going to get people the help they need.
And we can tell that you're committed to making sure that happens. And September is going to be a big month, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much, Tony Vesna from 4D, Fourth Dimension Recovery Center, for joining us here on Straight Talk.
Absolutely.
And thank you for watching and for listening to our podcast. If you haven't gotten our podcast yet, you can find it wherever you get your podcast. Just search for KGW Straight Talk. We'll see you next week for Straight Talk. Have a great week.